Stanford University.
So welcome back to E145, Technology Entrepreneurship. In this next video in the Customer Development Series, I'd like to introduce an entrepreneur, Jason Freedman. He is a co-founder of FlightCaster and is now doing his next startup, 42 Floors. And I'm excited to have him talk to you a bit more detail about some of the lessons he's learned as a successful entrepreneur.
I want to spend a few minutes with you guys today and just give you three brief stories, each of which showed a lesson on how I built my last companies. I've been an entrepreneur for 4 years. I've had some successes and some failures, and I don't know, we all go through the same process, so hopefully this will be helpful to you. Please feel free to reach out to me. I give you my contact information here. Would love to be helpful to you as you guys build your companies. When your name's in TechCrunch and the word acquires is there, it's generally a pretty good thing. And we got acquired, FlightCaster got acquired after several years of building it, and it was pretty awesome, especially after we had failed several times as a team before. Before we talk about what made it work with FlightCaster, let's back up and I'll show you a bright young entrepreneur, aged 18, freshman at a university, who really thought that the most important product that anyone could ever want was a loft. And so I built Student Lofts. This was an outstanding company. And for those of you that are building technologies that will change the world, I applaud you. But at 18, what I thought was most important was helping people put their beds 6 feet above so that they could fit a couch below in their college dorm room. And Student Lofts was probably the best beginning of a company I've ever done, because all it was a problem that needed to be solved and had a super simple solution that I could then provide and charge money for. And we really get caught up in disruptive technologies and network effects and trying to create moats around what we build and how are we going to create the next big thing. But at their core, all companies have one fundamental thing in common, and that is that you are solving a problem with a product that people want. And FlightCaster, when we did that, was Y Combinator funded, and Paul Graham, the head of Y Combinator, he makes us wear these shirts that have this one fundamental lesson, which is make something people want. And everything else you do, if you're talking about venture capital or fundraising or advisory boards or how you're integrating new technology, every one of those thousands of decisions you make something people want is the single most important thing you do, then everything else will work itself out. And at Student Lofts, our little college company, we made something people want, and we made a lot of money from it, and we were really happy with how the business turned out. And at times, I think our entrepreneurial community gets caught up in certain trends that lose sight of that. So with that, I show you my next company. This was OpenVote, and this was part of the social networking Web 2.0 craze of 2007 and 2008. And what we created here was a site that would allow people to talk about conversations within their college. And we raised some money and we worked really hard on building the site, and tons of people used it. And we were looking at it as we were going to try to become, the next big Facebook. And lots of people had advice for us. So in this company, because we were further along and we'd already done some work, we really felt that working with advisors was really important, and raising money was really important. We spent a tremendous amount of time on that. And one of the things we did is we got a lot of advice. And when you're building your first startup, we realized that there's so much stuff you don't know that you have so much respect for anyone that can give you advice. And there are lots of really well-intentioned people that will give you advice that for them is good. So one of the best examples I have of this is we were learning how to just build the product development of our site, and people who formerly were at large tech companies like IBM or Microsoft were giving us advice on how you do tech specs and how you build a development process. That's really bad advice for a startup when agile development at that point was not yet a buzzword, and really it was the emerging trend that we should have been doing, which is let's just keep all of our development cycles really short and build something really quickly. But it taught me an important lesson, and this company ended up failing, and it was horrible, miserable, and I hated every minute of it. But the most important lesson I learned out of there was it is the entrepreneur's responsibility to get good advice and avoid bad advice. You will get lots of advice. That is an absolute truism. whether you can decide, whether you can figure out which of that advice is good is totally on you. And you can't go blaming people who gave you bad advice when they weren't running your company. So I have a few suggestions. Lots of these, hopefully you're already familiar with, but when you're looking for good advice, the single most important thing about searching for advice is to find people who have recently been in your shoes. I like to think of 18 months as the ideal startup advisor timeframe. 18 months ahead of you means if you're just starting your company now, maybe your advisor just raised their Series A or just hit product market fit. Or if you've already raised your Series A, then your advisor just raised their Series B. They're only a couple steps in front of you. And so the names on this list, they're all guys who know how to write that way. Paul Graham being one of my favorite. His essays on paulgraham.com/essays it's like a frequently asked questions book of everything that you want to go through with a startup. And if you're raising money, Venture Hacks, they're writing some of the best stuff out there on how you actually raise money from the perspective of like being on the Sandhill Shuffle, raising your round. Obviously, most people, hopefully in this video, are well familiar with Steve Blank. But customer validation is now a process that we can all follow. And it's always amazing to me when I talk to an entrepreneur who's working so hard on their product, but they haven't read through these particular people. When I find that, it often correlates with them having wasted tremendous amounts of time. And your goal in being an entrepreneur is to seek out the really good advice that allows you to save time, because time is what is going to kill you. If you don't reach product market fit, it won't matter whether you have money left. After enough time, you're just not going to get there. The emergence of incubators has also really helped this. And what Y Combinator's done with their incubator is it's helped people unlearn bad habits. So I came out of business school and I learned a whole bunch of bad habits. For instance, I learned how to do a PowerPoint. And startups don't do PowerPoints. Startups build products that people want, and then investors really like it because of that. And then after that, you build a PowerPoint that shows a graph going up and to the right. But when business school students think that they can write a PowerPoint talking about their dream, they're living as if it's 1999 and that still counts, and it doesn't anymore. And what Y Combinator does is it puts you in a group full of people and teaches you that. So what happens if you're not in Y Combinator? They've made all that stuff free. You can go on news.ycombinator.com and read about it through Hacker News, or you can go to Startup School, which is often hosted at Stanford, but it's free. And if you can't even get there, all of it's online. Those are all pieces of advice by people who are 18 months ahead of you. And you can contrast that with some very senior person giving you guidance on building a company because they took their company public 15 years ago, which they may be great for introductions, but they're not going to give you the best advice. So after failing OpenVote, we started FlightCaster, and we did it as a Y Combinator company. And FlightCaster was our efforts to solve the problem of flights being delayed. We predict delays 6 hours before the airline alerts. And we do that with a series of mathematical algorithms and great data managing, and it's a sweet product. And the biggest thing that was helpful in building FlightCaster, which ended up being venture-backed, and we had a lot of users, and we ended up selling it, is that all companies kind of follow the same process. So this is an epic picture that a lot of companies in Silicon Valley know. This is the process you will go through, we went through, and everyone else does. Your TechCrunch of initiation you thought was this destination. It's where your users spike massively, and everyone in your life tells you how proud they are of this thing that you've built. And it is followed like hours later with the wearing off of novelty, where all your users go away until you are 4 days later and people are still congratulating you, and you are the only one who knows that 14 people visited your site yesterday and you know you're in trouble. And that is when you're finally starting to be a real entrepreneur, which is you have hit the trough of sorrow. And that is the time when customer validation is most important, because everything you thought about your company is wrong. And for FlightCaster, that was absolutely true. It took us forever to figure out what all these problems were. And then finally, after months and months of works, we had this eminent release of improvement moment, which was followed like hours later by the crash of ineptitude. And this is so typical, and it's helpful to know that it's typical, because if you quit here, You're not quitting because your idea didn't work. You're quitting because you decided to quit. FlightCaster, we did not decide to quit. And through some wiggles of false hope and a lot of luck, we hit the promised land. But we did that by trying lots and lots of new things. And that's the third big lesson, which is optimization is not iterating. If you're going to be changing things, actually change them. And err on the side of making really big changes to your business model, because that's the only way to iterate towards a brand new product that's going to change the world. Optimizing is what people do once they're already successful. So that's my little spiel. Now I'm working on a new company, 42 floors. We're going to fix the way people search for commercial real estate. Same process, same customer validation. Maybe fundraising gets a little bit easier, but everything else is the same. Startups are tough, but what we want to make it is so that when you go searching for your 870 square foot office, we're going to be the ones that help you find it online. So my name is Jason Freedman. I'm happy to help any entrepreneurs out there who are trying to change the world. Connect to me through your social network of choosing, and feel free to look me up on HumboldtMBA.com. Thanks, guys.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.